The airport buzzed with the usual chaos of people rushing to their gates, announcements echoing through the terminal, and rolling suitcases clicking against the polished floors. Among the crowd was Lisa Carter, a mother traveling alone with her 8-year-old son, Jordan. It was his first time flying, and he clutched his small backpack tightly, his wide brown eyes scanning the massive windows where planes lined up like sleeping giants. Lisa had prepared everything to make the journey. Smooth snacks, books, and even his favorite stuffed dinosaur tucked into his carry-on. Jordan was excited, but a little nervous, gripping his mother's hand as they approached the boarding gate. She smiled down at him, reassuring him that flying was just like an adventure in the sky. The airline had announced pre-boarding for families with young children, so Lisa and Jordan joined the line along with a few other parents. The flight attendant standing by the entrance, a tall woman with sharp features and a stiff uniform, barely glanced at them as they approached. Her name tag read, Deborah, and the forced smile she offered was anything but welcoming. As Lisa handed over their boarding passes, Deborah's eyes flickered to Jordan. Something in her expression shifted, her lips pressed into a thin line, and her eyebrows drew together as if something was out of place. Lisa felt the change in energy immediately, a tightness settling in her chest. "Excuse me," Deborah said suddenly, her voice sharp. "You need to step aside." Lisa blinked, confused. "Is there a problem?" Deborah didn't address her at first. Instead, she looked down at Jordan, her gaze cool and distant. "He cannot board right now," she stated firmly. Lisa's grip on her son tightened. "I do not understand. We are allowed to pre-board. He is a child." Deborah exhaled impatiently and crossed her arms. "I need to check something. Just wait over there." She gestured toward the side, away from the boarding line. Other passengers started to glance their way, sensing the tension. A man standing behind them shifted uncomfortably, while a mother holding a toddler gave Lisa a sympathetic look. Lisa's heart pounded, but she kept her voice calm. "Check what exactly?" Deborah pursed her lips. "We have policies. I need to confirm he is actually traveling with you." Lisa's stomach dropped. "He is my son." Her voice was steady, but inside anger was rising. Deborah sighed dramatically. "I just need to verify. Please do not make a scene." A few gasps came from behind them. A woman in the crowd muttered, "Unbelievable." Jordan pressed closer to his mother, confusion and hurt flashing across his small face. He looked up at Lisa, his tiny fingers gripping her coat. Lisa took a slow breath, forcing herself to stay composed. "You are questioning whether I am his mother. Why?" Deborah hesitated for a split second before replying, "It is protocol." Lisa knew better. There was no protocol that required a black mother to prove her own child was hers before boarding. A flight. The weight of the moment settled on her like a heavy stone, but she refused to let it show. Other passengers were now watching closely, whispers spreading among them. A man in a business suit shook his head. A younger woman pulled out her phone, subtly recording. Lisa squared her shoulders and looked Deborah straight in the eye. "What exactly do you need to verify? His birth certificate, a DNA test, or are you just making this up as you go?" Deborah's posture stiffened. "Ma'am, I am just doing my job." Jordan's small voice finally broke through. "Mom, did I do something wrong?" Lisa's heart clenched. She crouched down and smoothed his curls. "No, baby, you did nothing wrong." Deborah huffed. "We are holding up the line. If you do not cooperate, you will have to wait until the last group boards." Lisa's jaw tightened. "So now we have to wait. For what reason?" Before Deborah could respond, another voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" A second flight attendant, a younger man with kind eyes, had walked up, sensing the escalating situation. He glanced between Lisa and Deborah, clearly assessing the scene. Deborah straightened and forced a smile. "Just handling a security check." The young flight attendant frowned. "A security check? For what? For a moment there was silence. Then, from the back of the line, a woman's voice called out loud enough for everyone to hear, "She is targeting them!" "That little boy did nothing wrong?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Deborah's face paled, but she quickly regained her composure. "I do not appreciate interruptions. This is a private matter." Lisa had had enough. She pulled out her phone and started recording. "You are telling me that I, a paying passenger, have to wait without a valid reason while others board, because you suddenly need proof that my son belongs with me?" Deborah's eyes flickered with something. Panic, perhaps, but she did not back down. "I suggest you lower your voice, ma'am." But Lisa was not alone anymore. Several passengers had taken their phones out, capturing everything. The whispers had turned into full conversations, and the tension had reached its peak. And then, just as Deborah opened her mouth to argue again, another voice boomed over the intercom. "Deborah, please report to the front desk immediately." She turned sharply, eyes narrowing. "What? But I am in the middle of—" "Now!" The voice was firm. A hush fell over the crowd as Deborah stiffened, her face losing color. She turned back to Lisa, but before she could say another word, the second flight attendant gently gestured for Lisa and Jordan to move forward. "Ma'am, you and your son are welcome to board now." Lisa nodded and led Jordan past Deborah, feeling the weight of the stairs behind her. As they stepped onto the jet bridge, she heard a man whisper, "She's about to lose her job," and then, behind them, came the unmistakable sound of Deborah's name being called once more. But this time, it was not from the intercom. It was her supervisor, and everyone was watching. Lisa held Jordan's hand tightly as they stepped onto the jet bridge, her heart still pounding from the confrontation. She could feel the weight of what had just happened pressing down on her chest. The murmurs behind her, the piercing stares, the quiet gasps, it all replayed in her mind like an echo that would not fade. Jordan stayed close, his small fingers gripping hers like a lifeline. His excitement from earlier had dimmed, replaced by quiet confusion. Lisa could see the questions forming in his mind, the ones he was too young to fully understand, but old enough to feel. "Mom," he whispered as they walked toward their seats. "Why did she not want us to get on the plane?" Lisa swallowed hard. How could she explain this to an 8-year-old? How could she tell him that sometimes, no matter how kind you are, no matter how well behaved, some people will still see you as a problem? She was not ready for that conversation, not now. "She was just confused, baby," Lisa said, keeping her voice gentle. "But everything is okay now." Jordan nodded, but the uncertainty in his eyes remained. Lisa forced a smile and guided him toward their row, helping him into the window seat. She wanted to move past this moment, to focus on the trip ahead. But she knew deep down that this was not over. As she settled in, she could hear hushed voices around her. Other passengers had seen what happened. Some gave her small nods of support as they passed. Others stole glances, their expressions unreadable. Lisa exhaled slowly, trying to shake off the feeling of being under a microscope. Across the aisle, an older woman leaned forward slightly. "That was wrong," she whispered, her voice filled with quiet anger. She had no right to do that. Lisa met the woman's gaze and nodded, grateful but still too shaken to say much. Moments later, the plane doors had not yet closed when a new commotion started near the front. Lisa turned her head slightly, her ears tuning in to the sharp, hushed voices. "I was just following protocol," Deborah's voice hissed, though it was not as strong as before. A deep male voice responded, calm but firm. "No, you were not, and now we have a problem." Lisa could not see what was happening, but she did not need to. The tension in the air was thick enough to feel. Jordan fidgeted in his seat. "Mom, are we still going?" he asked, his voice small. Lisa ran a soothing hand over his curls. "Yes, baby, we are still going." But she was not sure how soon. The minutes dragged on. A few rows ahead, A man in a navy blazer turned to the person beside him and muttered, "She's not coming back on this flight." Lisa closed her eyes for a moment, trying to push down the emotions rising in her chest. Relief, frustration, exhaustion, maybe all of them. Then, just as suddenly as the tension had built, a quiet shift rippled through the plane. A flight attendant, not Deborah, stepped through the aisle, her expression neutral, but her energy different. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice smooth and professional, "thank you for your patience. We will be departing shortly." Lisa let out a slow breath. Whatever had happened at the front of the plane, it was done, but the weight of it still sat heavy in the air. Jordan leaned against the window, his fingers tracing shapes against the glass. "Are you okay, Mom?" he asked softly. Lisa smiled, touching his cheek. "I am okay, baby. I am always okay." She was not sure if that was true, but she needed him to believe it. As the plane finally taxied down the runway, Lisa leaned back in her seat, staring up at the dim overhead lights. The flight might be moving forward, but in the back of her mind she knew this moment was not something she could just leave behind. The hum of the plane's engines filled the cabin as it climbed higher into the night sky. Lisa stared out the window, watching the lights of the city fade beneath the clouds. The tension in her shoulders had not eased. Even as they left the airport behind, she could still feel the weight of what had happened pressing against her chest. Jordan had settled into his seat, kicking his legs gently against the chair in front of him, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside his mother's mind. His innocence was a fragile thing, and Lisa wanted to protect it for as long as she could. A soft chime rang through the cabin as the seatbelt sign flickered off. Passengers around them began shifting in their seats, some reaching for overhead compartments, others murmuring quietly to one another. Lisa took a deep breath, hoping the flight would be uneventful from this point on. But then, a quiet voice interrupted her thoughts. "Excuse me," a woman said from across the aisle. Lisa turned her head to see the older woman who had spoken to her earlier. Her face was kind, but her expression was serious. "I just wanted to say, I saw everything back there, and I think you should report it." Lisa pressed her lips together, considering her words. She had thought about it. Of course. But where would it lead? Would they really take her complaint seriously, or would they brush it off as a misunderstanding? The woman must have seen the hesitation on Lisa's face because she leaned in slightly. She was out of line. That was not protocol. That was something else. Lisa met her gaze, something heavy settling in her chest. She knew exactly what the woman meant. "I do not want to cause trouble," Lisa murmured. The woman's eyes softened. "Sometimes trouble finds you whether you want it or not." Lisa let out a slow breath. She appreciated the support, but it did not erase the frustration still lingering in her gut. As the flight attendants moved down the aisle, offering drinks and snacks, Lisa noticed that Deborah was nowhere to be seen. She had been removed from the flight, that much was clear, but Lisa could not shake the feeling that this was not over. She reached for her phone, scrolling through her messages, debating whether to text her sister about what had happened. But before she could decide, she noticed something that made her stomach tighten. A man a few rows ahead was staring at her. It was not the casual glance of a fellow passenger. His eyes were sharp, focused, watching her in a way that sent a chill down her spine. Lisa turned away, pretending not to notice. Maybe she was being paranoid. Maybe he had just overheard everything earlier and was simply curious. But when she glanced back a few moments later, his eyes were still on her. Something about it felt wrong. Lisa shifted in her seat, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling creeping up her spine. But she could not shake the thought that this flight was going to be longer than she had expected, and that whatever had started at the gate was far from over.